Do you want to control your life, or do you want your fears to control your life? So we say, no. There's something that you could do about public speaking fear, and you can control your life and move on and do better at whatever it is that you do.
You are now listening to the Going North podcast, where you'll receive tips and techniques to advance yourself. I'm your host, Dom Brightman, and every week we're going to be hearing from an author who's going to share their expertise to help you charge forward in life. On a quick side note, be sure to check out Going North the book. It's available in ebook, audio, as well as paperback form for those who love to read a traditional book. Now let's get on with the show. Coming at you again with another session of gratitude for a wonderful human being. And today's wonderful human being of honor is the one, the only Kimyon Zari. And this wonderful lady right here, she is a cool human being that I met last year at an event held by Sir Charles called Change Mastery, from Training to Triumph. And not only that, she also celebrated a birthday recently, so happy belated birthday to you, Kimyon. I hope things are going north in your wonderful world. And this fabulous woman right here has an awesome singing voice, and you definitely need to hear it and have her speak at your next event. So if you type in Kimyon Zari, that is Kimyon Zari, Z-A-R-I, look her up and hire her to speak at your next event. And she also has a book coming out soon, all about battling and defeating procrastination as well. So Kimyon, thanks a bunch for all that you do and being a member of the STC Elite. Looking forward to that book. Kick it out so you can get on this podcast soon.
And today on the Going North podcast, where we bring wonderful people around the world. Today's a special occasion because today we'll be talking about public speaking. It's a skill a successful leader needs to master to be influential and to communicate effectively to employees, team members, prospects, and clients. My guests are Allan Kaufman and Allan Misch. These two wonderful, awesome human beings I met about a good 5 years ago, and they became my friends and mentors through Toastmasters. And these two wonderful folks right here, they've attained the highest level of achievement in Toastmasters, Distinguished Toastmaster. Since 1929, only 0.1% of all Toastmasters have been awarded the title of Distinguished Toastmaster. They are professional speakers, trainers, and public speaking coaches. They specialize in helping business presenters eliminate presentation anxiety and master presentation skills. They've also written 7 books on public speaking, and most are available on Amazon.com. And you can visit their website at nosweatspeaking.com. Once there, you can access a ton of information on public speaking for free, my favorite 4-letter word. And you can also download 4 free videos on how to make your presentation slides more memorable, because we all hate death by PowerPoint. And the most exciting thing about this interview today is at the end of our interview, Allan and Allan have a very special offer only available to my wonderful listeners here today. So make sure you stay tuned to the end. Welcome, Allan and Allan.
Hi, Dom.
Hello, Dom. Hey, how you doing, Dom?
Doing fabulous. It's great having you both on. 2 awesome mentors and friends. It's an amazing thing.
Well, we're glad to be here, and we're honored to be here. In fact, we've seen you grow, and it's really, really fantastic what you've been able to accomplish in just a short amount of time. So we're really honored to be here with you.
And thanks for having us on your podcast.
Oh, yeah, it's great to have you both on. It's been a long time coming, and it's finally happening. Just the topics about public speaking. How can public speaking skills benefit those, for the wonderful listeners? How can public speaking benefit them?
So the question is, how can public speaking skills benefit your listeners? Well, Dom, being able to confidently deliver an effective, engaging, and informative message in front of an audience actually is probably one of the most, if not the most, important skill to develop. I say develop because no one is born a public speaker. It's a learned skill. Now, let me ask you a question, Dom. Do you think many of your listeners work for a living?
Yeah, they definitely work for a living.
I suspect that they either work for a living in a company or organization, or maybe they even have their own businesses. Some of them may be still students in school, maybe in college, or some of them may belong to some organizations. It doesn't matter. Wherever they are or whatever they are doing, public speaking skills will help them do better at their jobs, be a better manager or supervisor, get promoted, gain more customers, allow them to speak up and express their opinions, and perhaps persuade others to their point of view. And today on this podcast, we will be sharing with your listeners a few public speaking hints, and, as you mentioned, a special offer to help them become confident, dynamic, effective, and engaging speakers. Allan, do you have anything else to add to this?
No, you pretty much covered it. I guess one other thing, especially for our listeners who are just entering into the job market, and even people who are already established and are looking to get promoted, when you master public speaking skills, you will ace any job interview. I guarantee that. So it's very important to develop those public speaking skills because it will help you to get the kind of job that you want and to move on in your careers.
Thank you. That's good.
Yeah, I can agree with that wholeheartedly because it's like with public speaking, it's like to being able to have enough confidence to open up your mouth and speak clearly and confidently, it really gives you an edge over everyone else.
Absolutely.
So speaking of developing that edge, how can the wonderful listeners develop or improve their public speaking skills?
First, what they need to do is get rid of their speaking anxiety, and after I answer this question, we can let Allan Misch cover that part. But in terms of how they can improve their public speaking skills, there's several ways. One way is, if you have time, to attend regular meetings, and if you're in no rush, to attend regular meetings and develop your skills. One way is to join Toastmasters International. Toastmasters is a highly respected worldwide organization made up of clubs that meet, on average, about once every 2 weeks, where members get together for about 90 minutes to learn and practice their public speaking skills. And if you want more information about Toastmasters, you can go to www.toastmasters.org. Another way to develop your skills is to take a public speaking course. And you can check out your local colleges for more information. And finally, if you're short on time and you really need to gain public speaking skills more quickly, for example, maybe you're about to get promoted and you know you're going to have to give presentations where before you didn't have to do so, you may consider hiring a public speaking coach. This is actually perhaps also the only way if you're really suffering from speaking anxiety. And like I said, Allan Misch will cover that after this in a few seconds. Right now, Allan Misch and I are coaches specializing in overcoming public speaking fears. Allan, do you have anything to add to this?
Well, if a person has a public speaking fear, it's very important that they do something about it. Because if you have a public speaking fear and you don't do anything about it, eventually it's going to catch up to you and you're not going to be able to move along in your career that you would like to. If you're a technical person and you want to move into management, you're going to need to give presentations. And if you have public speaking fear, that could hold you back from getting the promotion that you want. perfect example of that is years ago, a guy calls me up and he says, I was wondering if you could help me. Somebody gave me your name and said I should give you a call. I said, okay, what's the situation? He said, I was down in Baltimore on a temporary assignment, and I did very well, and I was offered a promotion. But the promotion involved me giving presentations every so often. And I've had a lifelong fear of public speaking. And I want to know, if I come down there, can you help me get rid of my public speaking fear? I said to him, most probably yes, but I can't give you a 100% guarantee because I cannot foretell the future. So he said, okay, I'll think about it. Well, I find out later on that he turned down the promotion. This guy had a lifelong fear of public speaking, and he's let it get in the way of moving on in his career. What's going to happen is, if he doesn't do anything about his public speaking fear, he will live his whole life feeling guilty, feeling terrible, maybe even depressed, that he couldn't be where he wanted to be in life because he was unwilling to do something about a fear that's held him back. So the key is, do you want to control your life, or do you want your fears to control your life? So we say, no. There's something that you could do about public speaking fear, and you can control your life and move on and do better at whatever it is that you do.
Can I add to that?
So, yeah.
So basically, we've discovered that there are two parts to overcoming public speaking fear. One, for many people, or for some people, just gaining public speaking skills, whether you take a course, join Toastmasters, or hire a public speaking coach, for some people, that'll do the trick, because once you know how to speak in front of an audience, your fear may go away. And public speaking fear is the number one fear. The thing about developing your skills, however, is for many, it doesn't go away, and they still suffer from the fear. The second reason many people have a fear of speaking in public is because something happened in their past that created this lifelong fear. Maybe it was a boss who yelled at them or embarrassed them. Maybe it was even a teacher back in grade school that embarrassed them, or their fellow classmates laughed at them. What happened was this anchored a long-lasting speaking anxiety that will not go away by itself. If this is the case for one speaking fear, then we suggest getting a specialized public speaking coach who knows how to deal with this problem, because that's the only way you're going to get rid of it. Turns out Allan Misch and I have created our no-sweat speaking process to deal with this issue. But it's very important to overcome the fear, as Allan mentioned, and actually for many people, because of the fear, they're even afraid to take a public speaking course because they'd have to get up in front of a group of people. Taking a public speaking course and even joining Toastmasters for a number of people will not do the trick in terms of getting rid of their speaking fear. So just keep that in mind. Anything else, Allan, to add to this?
No, I think you pretty much covered that.
For those that have presentation anxiety, why is it important to overcome it?
Well, as we said before, presentation anxiety can hold you back in many different areas of your life. A person who has presentation anxiety usually doesn't just have it in one sphere. In other words, when it comes to giving a presentation in front of people at work, it also usually occurs in social situations. So people who have public speaking fear tend to not do well in situations where there are other people. So they shy away from that. Also, they don't do well in job interviews. And they may also find it difficult to meet new people because they their fear not only is a fear when they get in front of a group, but it may also bleed over to when they are speaking one-on-one to somebody. So it is important to overcome that fear and develop your skill as a communicator. You know, the thing is, when you think about communication is probably the most important thing that you do in your life. We communicate 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, every week of our lives. We communicate by mail, by email, by text. We communicate one-on-one in conversations, and we have to sometimes communicate to a group of people at the same time. But when we're not doing that, we're also communicating with ourselves in our self-talk, in our dreams. So we communicate 24 hours a day, all of the time. So the more you can improve your communication skills, the more you will be able to get the things that you want in your life, because it's the most important part of your life. So I think that's the reason, a big reason why it's important that if you do have a fear that's standing in the way of developing that part of your communication toolbox, that you do something about it. Develop the skills to talk to more than one person at a time and to overcome any fears, negative beliefs that you might have that are preventing you from doing just that.
And a lot of people just have that fear, and some folks even have trouble with maybe even think of something to say when they get up to speak.
Another aspect of public speaking, not only prepared speeches, but impromptu speaking. And it's important to develop that skill, because you use that generally at a meeting, and your boss is talking about something, and then he says, hey, Dom, can you tell us about the XYZ project that you've been working on? And you weren't expecting to do that, and now all of a sudden you have to do that. So you didn't prepare. So what do? Well, if you know how to give an impromptu talk, it will be easy for you. You'll be able to do that, and you'll look very sharp while you're doing that. Allan, do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, also developing your skills with impromptu speaking, to be able to give an impromptu speech, is extremely helpful when you're on an interview, because even though you can practice in advance for an interview, you really don't know exactly what kinds of questions or what questions you may be asked. So if you can think on your feet because you've developed your skills in impromptu speaking, then you will greatly enhance your ability to go on an interview.
Yeah, because sometimes they may have like the general question, like tell us about yourself, but there's always that curveball out there that they'll probably throw at you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Exactly.
And the thing is, if you know how to structure a very short presentation, an impromptu presentation, you will be able to answer that question in such a way that it will impress that interviewer very much. I know I've worked with people, I've taught them a formula that they could use to answer the question, and they ace these interviews like crazy. So it is important, especially in a job interview, as Allan said.
Yeah, especially doing it in a smooth fashion, because some folks, they may answer the question, but out of nowhere they use these audible pauses like and like So any advice for those who may have that issue and they may not know about it?
Exactly. Many people use filler words, ahs and ums. Also, like, especially young people today, they use the word like all the time. Some people will say you know, or okay. Every third sentence, okay. You can always tell a professional from an amateur. The amateurs say fillers. In fact, Allan Misch and I coined the phrase filleritis. We say that filleritis is a curable disease that many people suffer from, not only speaking in front of audiences, but also just speaking in general conversations. Some people say to me, well, I only say ahs and ums in my conversations. And I say to them, well, it bleeds over into your public speeches, so you have to get rid of filleritis. So why do people have filleritis? Turns out people are afraid of having too much time between their sentences. They think that it's maybe 3 to 10 seconds. So they fill in the time with an ah or an But the fact of the matter is, the time between sentences is really only maybe 1 to 2 seconds or even less. A number of years ago, I remember attending a banquet where a couple was being honored for their service. The husband was given some time to speak to thank everyone. Well, he kept talking and talking and saying the word okay over and over and over again. So much so that my 85-year-old mother-in-law, who was sitting next to me, she turned to me and said, he keeps saying okay. My mother-in-law, 85 years old, noticed that this guy had a filler okay every third sentence. It was that noticeable. The key to curing your filleritis is to pause. However, first you must recognize that you have filleritis. Most people do not even know they suffer from it. Why? Because it happens on a subconscious level. So now what? If you're lucky, someone will tell you. But this does not happen a lot because no one wants to embarrass you. If you join Toastmasters, you will find out very quickly if you say fillers. Why? Because at Toastmasters meetings, there's one member at each meeting who counts everyone's use of filler words. Once you know about it, once it's now on your conscious level, then you will still say fillers for a while, but you'll be catching yourself saying them. As you're about to say a filler, just pause. Speaking of pausing is a good thing to transition from one point to another and to allow your audience time to take in your message. So get rid of those ahs and ums and likes and okays, and over time you will go from an amateur to a professional. Anything to add about that, Allan?
Well, when you pause, before you do that, before you give a presentation, you should program your mind by saying to yourself, I am not going to use a filler word. Instead, I'm going to pause, as Allan said. And what happens is, when you're about to use a filler word, you stop because you're starting to program yourself not to use the filler word. So over time, as you're about to use a filler word, you will stop and pause. And then that will become an automatic behavior for yourself. And you won't even have to stop yourself. You'll just stop and pause automatically. So that's how you get rid of those filler words.
Good tips indeed. Good tips right there. And it's true, especially with you, Allan, with the story about your 85-year-old mother-in-law, just noticing the speaker using okay over and over again. It's stuff like that turns into drinking games. Like, all right, every time this person says okay, take a shot, and then now to know everybody in the room's dead because they said so many fillers.
Yeah, it's a disease that's out there. I will tell you, many people suffer from it. The problem is they don't know they suffer from it.
I was at a presentation one time in the audience, and there was a guy sitting next to me, and the speaker, he must have been, he spoke for maybe about 45 minutes, and every sentence had some kind of filler word in it. And the guy sitting next to me, around 3/4 of the way through his presentation, says to me, this guy has used 63 filler words. He says, I know that because I'm stroke counting them on a piece of paper. And he was actually stroke counting them. It was amazing.
Yeah, that was totally horrible right there. Oh, man.
So sometimes using filler words is almost as bad as having PowerPoint slides with 10,000 bullet points on them, slide after slide after slide. It kind of sends your audience into a trance where their eyes glaze over and they start going someplace else in their minds.
Probably order some Krispy Kreme donuts, right?
Right.
But the other good thing about that is folks can probably avoid that through preparation. So what's your best advice for preparing for a presentation?
Well, there are a few things you need to do to prepare for a presentation. The first, probably, and the most important thing is you should develop your skills. And as Allan mentioned before, there are a number of ways to do that. You could join Toastmasters. You could take courses. You can work with a public speaking coach. But you need to develop your skills. And, of course, very importantly, you need to get over any fear of public speaking that you might have. Then the next thing you do when you're actually get an assignment to give a presentation is you need to find out everything that you can about that speaking situation. So number one, you need to write down and brainstorm everything you know about that subject. And then you need to do some research on the subject if the information that you have to give your listeners goes beyond what you already know. You also need to find out something about your audience. Who is in your audience? What's the makeup of your audience? The demographics of your audience? Because how you give a presentation to one audience may be different to another audience. For example, how you give a presentation to managers and executives is different than how you give that information to technical staff. So it's important to know who's in your audience. You also need to know what is it that your audience wants to take away from your presentation. What are the most important points? And I always ask the person who's the chairperson of the meeting, what is it that your audience would like to know when they leave that room? And when that person tells me that, I use that as my key points in my presentation. So you want to know something about your audience. You want to know something about what it is that they need. And then you also want to know about the venue, where you're speaking, the logistics, what is going to happen before and after you speak. You need to know what kind of equipment is there. Will you need to use a microphone, a PA system? If you're going to be using slide, PowerPoint, or Keynote, do they have the equipment that you could use? So all of those kinds of questions need to be asked, and you need to know about them before you get to the venue. So that's some of the things you need to do in preparation. Now, the last thing in preparation is you actually need to organize and construct your presentation. And then along with that, once you have that presentation organized, you have an outline, let's say, you then need to learn that presentation and then practice that presentation. And there are techniques that you could use to learn a presentation and to practice a presentation. So that's all that's involved in actually preparing for giving that presentation. There's one other item, I guess. If you're giving a PowerPoint presentation, after the planning part, you need to do the design part. So then you have another phase, and that is designing your PowerPoint slides. But that's really not part of preparation. That's a separate phase altogether. But the preparation is knowing everything you can about the subject, finding out what it is that your audience needs, learning about your audience, who they are, finding out about the venue where you're going to be speaking, and the logistics involved. Once you have that all down and you practice and learn your presentation, you'll be good to go.
Definitely right about that design part for the slides, too. Because I remember that presentation you gave at our club, which was outstanding.
Oh, thank you. Appreciate it.
Let me add one thing about that. What a lot of people don't recognize is getting formally trained. It turns out there are a lot of people out there who give speeches. And it reminds me of the guy who said, I've been speaking in public for 10 years. So I asked this guy, so have you ever been formally trained? He said, no, but I've been speaking for 10 years. I guess he does not know what he does not know. And there are many speakers out there just like him. Most likely they're making the same mistakes over and over again, year after year, because they don't know how to make their speeches even better. Just because they keep speaking and doing it the same way over and over again for 10 years doesn't make them a great speaker. They may be a decent speaker, but most of the time they're not dynamic, engaging, effective, fearless speakers. So what your audience needs to understand is getting formally trained one way or the other is really a good idea. Because even if you pick up just one or two ideas that you haven't been using in giving your presentations, that will greatly enhance your speeches. And if you happen to suffer from public speaking fear, you really need to get formally trained, especially by a coach. Allan or Dom?
Yeah, that reminds me of a story unrelated to public speaking, but there's a lesson involved that you could apply to the situation that Allan was just talking about. Years ago, when I was single, I went skiing for the first time for a week at a ski resort with a girlfriend of mine. And she grew up in an area where she started skiing at an early age. So we get to the resort, and I sign up for a lesson for every day that we were there, and we were there for a week. So I said to her, are you going to take any lessons? And she said to me, no, I don't need to take any lessons. I've been skiing, and it just so happens it was 10 years. She said, I've been skiing for 10 years. So when I thought about it, I thought, yeah, why spend the money for lessons if you're experienced and you've been skiing for 10 years? That makes sense. So anyway, by the end of the week, the two of us went skiing together. Now, she skied better than me, but not that much better than me. And I learned something from that. What I learned was that she wasn't skiing for 10 years. She was skiing 1 year 10 times. You understand what I mean? In other words, she only had 1 year's worth of skill, but she was using that same basic skill for 10 years. If she had been taking more lessons, she would have advanced to a more advanced skier. So that lesson I've applied throughout my life, and especially when it comes to presentation skills. And that is, even though a person may be speaking on their job, let's say, for a number of years, that doesn't mean that they're really skilled, because chances are they're not even getting any feedback about how their presentations are going. So that's why it's important to, number one, try to find out how you really are doing, and number two, get better. Get better at what you're doing. Get the best that you can be, because the better you are, let's say at public speaking, the more chance you have of competing against people who aren't as good as you, and you will then be in a position to get the bonus, to get the promotion, to lead the meeting, to do the things that the other people will not be able to do. So it's important that you do get training and develop those skills in public speaking.
Just having the right amount of lessons and the right coach will really just not only give you the edge, but also helps you zoom past the competition away. And it's true. It's true indeed, especially if you don't have anyone giving you feedback on your progress, even if you're making progress.
Absolutely.
Yes, indeed. Well, a question like to ask every guest, and that is, in this case, if you were to have all of your amassed wisdom and hours on the stage combined that you both have, and wake up tomorrow when you're 25 again, but this time in the current year of 2019, what advice would you give to yourself?
Knowing what I know now, I hopefully would learn public speaking at a much earlier age. The earlier, the better. Give you an example. I'm currently also, in addition to being a public speaking coach and trainer, right now I also teach high school part-time. I teach public speaking to 11th grade boys. These are 16-year-olds, and it's amazing. After 1 year of school year of teaching them, these boys become amazing speakers, totally confident, amazing, effective, engaging speakers. And the great thing about it is they're only 16, and they have this skill now for the rest of their lives. They can use this skill to go into any profession they decide they want to go into. They will have this skill, and they will have an advantage over everybody else. Everybody else comes along the way. So the advice I would give myself is learn public speaking skills, become confident, effective speakers at an early age as possible. In school these days, or at least in the olden days, they didn't teach public speaking. Reading, writing, and arithmetic. While public speaking is probably more important than all of that, especially in today's society. So that's what I would tell myself. What about you, Allan?
I think I would do the same. Probably up until my 30s, I was an introvert, and I would shy away from doing things that involve numbers of people. I also didn't interact well with people one-on-one. I wasn't the greatest communicator. And if I had a way that I could learn the skills of communication back then, I would have done that. And I know that by the time I got into my 20s, I would have been a much more skilled communicator. I would have gotten out of my shell, because that's what I did when I was in my 30s. I got out of my shell, and I really started to move on in terms of communication, dealing with people, meeting people, developing great social contacts, and developing my skills as a presenter, and then going into coaching and speaking, professional speaking, etc. And if I could have done that at a much earlier age, I could have gotten a really big head start on my career and maybe taken different paths that I took early on. So that's what I would recommend to most younger people, especially, is develop those communication skills when you're younger, because they'll really pay off big time as you move on in your life and in your career. So, Dom, I guess we're probably heading towards the end of your podcast, right?
Yes, indeed. And you mentioned paying off big, so am I going into the details? Because I believe you have a special offer for the Going North podcast listeners.
Yes, we do, Dom. Here's the offer for you listeners out there. Pay close attention. We're offering you 5 hours of individual, customized presentation skills coaching, including our no-sweat speaking process to help you get rid of any speaking anxieties. The great thing about this is we can do this in person or via Skype or FaceTime. We've had clients all over the United States and also in other countries, and that's how we've done it. We also include our comprehensive public speaking manual and our no-sweat speaking videos. Now, our normal price for 5 hours, including all the materials I mentioned, our normal price is $997. For you guys and girls out there, we're offering you a special price, $200 discount, $797 podcast special. $797 podcast special for 5 hours of individualized, customized presentation skills coaching. If you're interested in this offer, this is what you need to do. You can send an email to Allan, Allank, at nosweatspeaking.com. That's Allank at nosweatspeaking.com. Or cust-serve, cust-serve at nosweatspeaking.com. That's also listed on our website. So for more information initially, you can go to www.nosweatspeaking.com, www.no-sweat, S-W-E-A-T, speaking, S-P-E-A-K-I-N-G.com. Click on our coaching session and read about it. Then send us an email to cust-serve at nosweatspeaking or Allan K at nosweatspeaking.com. Mention this offer. Mention you heard about us at the DOM podcast, and we'll give you the special $200 off discount. Do you have anything to add about that, Allan?
No, other than if by some chance you forget the email address and all, if you contact Dom will then forward your request to us, and we can still get in touch with you and do what we have to do to talk to you about the coaching sessions. That's all I have to add.
Fantastic. Don, we'd also like to thank you again for having us on your podcast. It was a great experience.
Yes. I second that. And again, as I mentioned at the beginning of the podcast, you have come such a ways. It's amazing. You're not the same person that I met 5 years or so ago. And I really feel great about that. And I'm really happy and honored to be on your podcast. Thanks a lot.
Woohoo! Glad you both set aside the time to be on. So there you have it, folks. If you're going to put that out in the show notes, check out that special offer. You will not be disappointed. You'll definitely be a presentation machine after being with the AA batteries of public speaking, baby.
Hey there, you superstar. Thanks a bunch for making it this far in the podcast. Hope you really enjoyed it. Heck, if you made it this far, that means you really enjoyed it. Be sure to shoot the guest an email or head over to the social media pages and leave them a nice response that you heard them on the Going North podcast, so that way they can continue to be inspired to do great things. And be sure to share this podcast with others that you think would enjoy it as well, because we want to inspire as many people as possible to live their dreams, embrace them, and to do something positive.